What's up, Rockstars? Welcome to my review for Earth Under Siege Flashpoint. This is a game that has a ton of promise, makes a ton of promises. Can it live up to it? Can this finally be the game we've been waiting for, the kind of stealth plus action combo that we have tried many times and not exactly succeeded at? Well, let's find out. Thank you to my channel sponsor Into the AM. As a company that believes hard work and a great product is a proper way to conduct business, I am delighted to have them as part of the channel. They have some of the coolest graphic t-shirts around and an absolute best fit and feel that has continually exceeded my expectations. With new shirts arriving all the time and other products like boxers, hats, and even a monthly shirt club, I wholeheartedly recommend them to you. Check out the link in my description of this video for an exclusive 10% off everything they sell. As always, a huge shout out to my patrons and YouTube members. It is through their financial support that this channel is possible. If you appreciate the videos that I make every single week for you guys, there is a link down below in the description, and that donation incredibly helps run this channel, helps buy a lot of the product, helps the future and sustainability of this channel, and I thank you so much for it. There's a great Discord, a wonderful community there. There's weekly videos exclusive to supporters. There is some giveaways I do. I try to do at least one a year, sometimes even a couple times a year, where I give back to those that give so much to me. And again, thank you so much to all of them. And with that, let's dive right in. Now, first things first, let's get the obviously important stuff out of the way. Miniatures. Okay, so yeah, there's a game, but whatever, who cares about that? These miniatures are cool. They are very large. I'm going to actually put an image on the video right now to show you a kind of a size comparison to like Mythic Battles Pantheon and perhaps a few others, and you can kind of see the size of them. They're actually quite large right now and very dynamic, very interesting. There are going to need changes to make final production plastic molds of those. It's something I work in more and more and look more into, and that being said, these are going to be solid. I can tell already. The details there, the designs there. The hard part isn't getting the detail. The hard part's getting the design to be interesting. And I think they did that very well. There's some very cool enemies, very dynamic poses. Overall, very nice, big, chunky miniatures. I love them. They are fantastic. Additionally, they're attached to some of the dumbest named heroes ever. I played as a character named Billy. And I don't know what kind of power fantasy somebody else has, but my power fantasy doesn't involve being named Billy. So you got Billy and you got Olivia, and it sounds like a kindergarten class, and I'm calling roll call. Olivia, are you here? Olivia, stop picking your nose. Billy, that's an... I found it a little silly. They have cooler names like No Mates and Mad Doc, and Marissa's just Marissa, whatever. There's Kyle. Trick Shot sounds way cooler than Kyle. That's all I'm saying. I can understand why they have some nicknames there. It's very minor quip, of course, but I wanted to get it out of the way because otherwise it wasn't going to fit in this review at all. But I wanted to mention it, playing as a guy named Billy. Not quite so cool. Okay, so let's talk about the map, right? You got the cool minis. You got the dumb names. It's on a fantastic map. The map is actually a big variety. I was surprised going through all the different scenarios and the special ops and all that stuff, just how different setups they were. They were very smart. They felt very different. The hallways versus the rooms are very either compact or not. The rooms definitely feel separated. The one thing I noticed that there wasn't a whole lot of in these scenarios is rooms attached to each other. In other words, like multiple levels inside of a room. That being said, I've only scratched the surface of all the scenarios that they're going to offer. And so I am sure, based off the variety I've seen, that there's going to be plenty. There's ventilation shafts too to kind of change things up. There's very cool variety here. I was very surprised by the layout changes and how different each level felt. And I think it just looks visually appealing too. It definitely looks like there's already a battle that's happened. So there is that. You're normally supposedly sneaking into some like weapons facility or something like that, and they need to hire a janitor. That's all I'm saying, because their places are already jacked up. It kind of reminds me of playing a game of Warhammer 40k. You always start the battle, but all the terrain is already damaged and everything, so it already looks like the battle's been raging on for like 3 years. Knowing Warhammer, that's probably the case, but it reminds me of that, where it's like, oh yeah, go to their weapons facility. Like, they're making weapons in here? They need a mop. it's very much like, it fits after, but when you first get into it, it is a little silly that it's so messy, but I loved it. I really did. The art style is very nice on it, and again, each map felt different, and we were doing different things on that. I'll talk more about that in a little bit. With the map, though, being so nice, it is a long setup time, and it's not really the map's fault per se. They even say, like, you don't really have to be too stingy about the hallways. The rooms are often a little bit more important, but the hallways, you can tell, just get the shape of it. I'm stingy, though, and if it says that C1 goes there, then C1 goes there, and that's just how it's going to have to be. But there are a lot of decks of cards. There are a lot of tokens, a lot of different kinds of tokens. There's tokens that you have there. You have your Overwatch, you have your starting focus, you have your action tokens and movement tokens, you have your cards that you have equipped, you have the cards you have to divvy out to people based off your strategy, you have your tactic cards, you have 2 different loot decks, you have 2 different spawn decks, you have the enemy cards, and they have to be laid out in a certain order, then you have the enemy spawn cards that you also need, then of course you need the cards that you turn every single turn, you need the condition card, you need to set up the escalate, plus the tiles, plus all the tokens on the tiles and all the different doors and all the different blips and objective cameras, the status tokens, the dice, the technician card. It's a big game. It's a big game for big boys, and it does take a while to set up. It's not like Joan of Arc ridiculous or anything like that, because instructions actually match the product that I own. However, it was definitely above average of the prototypes I play, of the board games I play. This was above average. Nothing crazy, but enough to where I noticed it, where I'm like, oh, I gotta set it up again. You know, like you're like, oh, I want to play the game, but okay, all right, let's play the game. Maybe I'm a little stingy on that, but I tend to sigh a lot, and there was a few sighs every time I knew I had to set this game back up. If you can leave it set out, that's awesome. Good for you. If not, just you know, give yourself 20 minutes to make sure you got all the different things out and shuffled all the different decks and did all that stuff, then you're golden. But it is kind of a lot. The scenario variety, when you do set it all up, when you get all the map there, is awesome. And it's not just the looks of it. The scenario, I'm also including the objectives that you're doing. You're doing so many different things. I was very impressed that out of just a handful of missions, a handful of special missions, there was a huge variety. There was a convoy at one point. There was a boss battle kind of mechanic thing where you get to debuff the enemy. There were times where we went in super stealthy and we were like laying down like mines for when things went loud, and you know, we had to sneak in and get this. There were times where we were going through ventilation shafts. There was a time where we had to get a specific person. Everything else was just white noise. We could ignore whole groups. There was times where we wanted to stock up and get new items first, and then, you know, I mean, it was very nice to see the variety, not just in layout, but in objectives and what you're doing. It's not the same thing over and over again. Sometimes there was, like in this one, there was 3 objectives we had to get, and each one got successively harder, but then there were also all these cameras in there, so we were really kind of hard. Whereas the ones before this, when we had played that, there weren't that many cameras, and it was a lot easier to kind of move around. But then we had different tools that we were using, because we had like holo projectors and disguises we were wearing and all sorts of that kind of stuff. There's a lot of variety here, and just based off what I saw, if they can keep that up, it's up there on some of the most varying experiences I've had in a single game when it comes to just the things you're doing. There are games that I think do that really well, but typically it's with an expansion, right? A lot of times you'll get a game that plays like the game it plays, right? And it's fine, there's variety, but then you get the expansion. The expansion is like, oh, now it's all water-based and there's all this stuff here. Or now there's a whole bunch of tiny rooms and you're going through a maze, or, you know, whatever it's doing something different. It's another flavor. It's another shift. It's another change. That was just the game here, and I was really impressed with that. I really did enjoy it. They were very smart with some of the mechanics of this, especially like even just the patrol. That there was a convoy that was going on, and the map was separated into 2 different sections, and it's really good. Really impressed with that. And coupled with that, these strategy cards are awesome. This is Espionage 1. They also have Espionage 2, and then they have Black Ops, and then they have, I forget what the other one's called, but there are essentially 3 different ways. you can go about doing your mission. And sometimes it's like it holds your hands, it very much tells you, and then it kind of lets you say, okay, pick which way you want. You want to go in loud? You want to go in quiet? You want to go in sneaky? Very, very cool, because it's not just this card which can change setup. It can change abilities, but it comes with a whole bunch of items. It could be tactical armor, where you get extra stealth with this armor, or and this one you get remote explosives and a bypass kit for hacking stuff, and a hollow projector, and another one you might get stun grenades, and a little thing you can slip underneath the door to see the enemies there, so you know what you're getting into before you even go through that door, and you can prep up for it. Plays completely different. It's a different play style, different tactic, and you can choose that ahead of time. The closest I can compare this to is actually Batman Gotham City Chronicles. Now, I know a lot of people didn't get into that game right away, and it's because of this. So I'm glad this holds your hand, because one of the things that Batman did that wasn't in Conan was, especially for the heroes, is a prep step where you get to pick the tools that you're bringing into the game. You know, are you going to get a grapple hook or an explosive gel, or are you going to get a multi-batarang or whatever? And the things you picked defined how you were going to play the game. And for some missions were bad choices and some were good choices, but it was on the heroes to pick that. And so I know when I saw people review it, I especially knew if that clicked on them right away or not. Because if you play your first few missions of Batman and the people that are the heroes aren't making good decisions, you'll have a bad experience. I suspect this would be the same way, except that they guide you through it. So the first few missions you play in this campaign, you're like, okay, you're going to do this one, you're going to do this one. So you understand the benefits. So by the time you're making your own decision, you do that. So it solves that problem. And I think that's really good for new players. There's nothing that prevents people from playing a game as much as a bad first experience, or a bad first 2 or even 3 experiences. That'll just ruin an entire game and you'll never play it again, even if the game is great. And maybe you just didn't get it because you didn't quite get that nuance, or you didn't quite get the benefit there, or just understand how that mechanic can be used properly. So they improved there. It's the same kind of thing as Batman, but I think improved in that respect. But you get to essentially pick the cards you get, and then you get to equip them, and who you equip it to matters too. So it very much can change the game. And I might mention that a little bit later on, because I made a few mistakes myself, and I felt them as game repercussions. It pretty much punishes you for making bad decisions before the game even starts. So, but then also implementing a proper strategy too. But loved these, loved the variety. It was a great way. And it means that if you'd have to play this a lot, the final version, to really define, like, okay, is it possible to beat them with all 3? Or maybe some are just like, yeah, don't pick that. That's a terrible pick. I don't know. But it would definitely change your strategy. So it'd be interesting to see if, I went loud on that one. Oh, really? I snuck through the whole thing and barely killed anyone. Like, it'd be cool to share stories like that with some of you guys. So as you guys get this game eventually, once it delivers, I would love to hear kind of what you're doing, and maybe I can compare to what I'm doing, and we can kind of share stories like that. And that's what that provides, and that's awesome. So really, really liked that. Now, as you're putting stuff on people, it does matter. However, the heroes don't. And what I mean by that is, like, okay, so I have 4 characters here. All right, I have Marissa, I have Olivia, I have Billy, and I have Kyle. Again, dumb names, whatever. Well, they're like normal names, but I don't like playing normal people. Billy. Anyway. And then you have, like, maybe this disguise with this bypass kit, the hacking kit, right? This makes it to where you can do sabotage actions with an extra red die. Fantastic. You could put it on Marissa. She only has 1 science die, so when she's sabotaging, she rolls 1. So now she'd roll 1 plus a red. Depending on the situation, that's probably not very useful, because Olivia here rolls 4 white by default. Adding that is now 4 white plus a red. So if you really need to hack something in the mission, give her the bypass kit, not Marissa. And if you need a whole bunch of people to bypass a whole bunch of stuff and you're able to do it, maybe you spread it out. But it's that decision process that goes there. And in that way, they're different. Additionally, they do have different decks and a lot of shared cards, a lot of unique cards as well. And unique cards are kind of interesting. Like she has one where she can essentially do some suppressive fire and then have people move. She's a big supporter and buffs other people, gives them tokens, stuff like that. However, having played all but one of these characters and looking through all their decks and seeing them all played, they don't actually feel very different. Now, she is the person that's doing the sabotage thing, but that's because everybody else has 1 die in that, so nobody else can do crap in that. She's the only one that can really succeed at that, so she's the one that does that. but you're not really doing a whole lot different mechanically. Now that's, I think, fine for a game like this. This isn't something where, you want one character to be teleporting around, zipping another character. You don't have an asymmetric view like that, but it is very much I'm playing tactic cards, I'm rolling dice, I'm doing checks, and we're all doing that, and we're all using focus tokens. I might specialize in sabotaging, but that is a fundamentally different feeling than the stealth guy that is good at stealth, because either way, you're just passing a skill check with your dice. And so the 4 dice there and the 4 dice here act the same. So they don't really feel different, so while they matter, which one you pick doesn't really change your experience too much. So don't go fretting that. There's not really a lot of like unique mechanics for each one or anything like that. None of them even have a special ability that really changes things. It typically just buffs a certain situation. Like Billy can Overwatch a lot. He's the sniper. Okay, great. So anyway, that's something I did note. I always try to mention if heroes are different or not and how they feel. And this one, they don't feel any different. One of the things I love about this, again, going back to Batman, going back to Conan, you guys know I love comparing that because it's my favorite game. The open turn order structure is fantastic when you can do it. I'll mention that in condition cards. But it's really nice. Essentially, you have these tokens. You have 3 movement and 3 action tokens, and you can spend those and exhaust those. And really whatever turn order you want. You have an on-point person, but besides that, everybody can do that, and you can mix and match. So maybe Marissa shoots, for instance, actually in this game, I recreated this from a certain situation we were in. I'll talk about later. Marissa shoots the guys in there, and then Olivia runs in there and does that. Marissa can still do actions later. Now she can move and lay a mine down or do whatever she wants to do, or take out this guy that's about to like bum rush her over here. She can do that. You can intermix actions until you're all done with your turn, your round, and it's over. And it makes everybody kind of work together to where it's not just, Mr. AP over there is busy doing his round. I'm going to go get a sandwich. Maybe use the restroom, maybe read a book. I'll come back when it's my turn. Just let me know when it's my turn, and then I'll do all my turn. And it doesn't work that way. Everybody's involved. You're all thinking about the strategy of the entire round, and I really like that. Additionally, it allows you to do some bigger moves, some smaller moves. Now, not to the same degree as something like Conan, where you have like 10, 11, 12 gems that you're moving around. This one, you have 6. Everybody has 6, the 3 movement, the 3 action tokens, but you only recover 3. So you might do all 6, but then you're only going to recover 3 or 2. Again, we'll mention that in conditions, balance and stuff like that. So we'll talk about that. But suffice it to say, really did enjoy the open turn order. It just helps a lot of things. It makes everybody invested, and it's just an enjoyable thing. Adds a whole nother strategy level to it without being gamey, right? The gamey part is, well, Olivia always takes turns after Marissa because she's to the left of her. Well, that's just based off of something outside the game in our seating order, right? Like, that doesn't make any sense. We would all be doing things kind of together. So I very much enjoy that from a thematic and a strategic point of view. It just adds more to it, I feel. Okay, now this could be compared to a few other games, most notably for the ones that have released that you guys have played, probably Reichbusters. And I'm happy to report that as a guy who hated the noise system in Reichbusters with its roll die and then check a card and then it doesn't matter anyway for every little thing. The noise checks in here are fantastic and they make a lot of sense. Essentially, you have things like shooting a gun. That'll probably make some noise, depending. Most of your people put silencers on, and silencers are like the movie silencers where it just like, it's like your gun, like nobody hears nothing. You're very good at killing them, and they go, when they die. However, when you're unloading explosives or a different kind of gun that does make noise, there are some like that, like a sniper rifle, that's going to make noise. That's going to be loud, especially in a building. So the noise check is not an action per se. Instead, you'll have a noise 1, 2, or 3 typically. And that's the distance things can hear. And they either hear it or they don't. So if I shoot a sniper and I'm here and it's 1, then anything here hears it, boom, that's the noise check. You're done. You don't have to roll die. You don't have to draw a card and see anything. Oh crap, maybe they heard me. I'm right next to them. Maybe they didn't. It's just, it's spatial. So when you lay off a bomb or something like that, well, it's 3. And suddenly everybody here was like, what the heck was that? Right? Very, very well done mechanic there. I loved the noise system. It solved that completely, streamlined it to death, and I am happier for it. It's not some extra mechanic I gotta do every single time. It's just shooting, and for the most part, if we're going in silent, we got silent guns. And if we go loud, well, we're going loud. Typically, we don't care at that point either. By the time I'm laying off remote explosives, I'm not doing the noise check anyway, because once the alarm goes off, noise check is gone. They all know you're there. You're all just shouting and shooting, and it's chaos. So very much enjoyed the noise system here. Very, very nice. I call it a system. It's a very basic thing, and I'm happy for it. The wound system is also, I think, really well. So I kind of mentioned how it's just like Conan, where as you get wounded, you'll flip these over to the exhaust and then you don't recover them. So you lose action. So you get weaker as you get hurt. Part of me doesn't like that because you're punishing failure. Which often means like, hey, are you having a bad time? Or you're going to have a worse time now. It kind of doubles down on it, and it can get kind of like a funnel of despair a little bit. As people get hurt more and more, you can do less and less, and eventually you're just in a losing state no matter what. So that is always a risk there. I still enjoy it though, because it's thematic and because it's a very simple way to do it. I don't have an extra health thing I'm managing or anything like that. It's the same tokens I've been dealing with, and just with less. So it naturally happens. And then what you do after that is, after the mission, anybody who has wounds draws a wound card, and then you have that wound card, and then typically they're in the real game campaign wise. We'll talk about the campaign a little bit. They'll be out for a little bit, but I really liked that combo system of the wound card afterwards. As you're not busy fussing with it during a game and learning new rules. Oh, okay, now I can move only one. Oh, I forgot that because it's on this card here that I'm not used to having. None of that's there. You just do your normal wound tokens. Those turn into wound cards. Really did enjoy that kind of combo system. It helped streamline it a little bit, I felt, and just kept us going, which is nice. It's just, got some wounds. Okay, there we go. Done. Moving on. Very quick for that combat, which I really did enjoy that aspect of it. Now, the one thing I didn't like is, and I didn't put this on the table, but you have essentially a base with some checkboxes and stuff like that. There is a med bay that you can have to heal wounds, which is great, except it's random. You're rolling a die, and the better the med bay, the higher the chances of healing or getting a shield. I hate that. I'm not a very luck. Like I roll badly, and especially when it's something like I can't re-roll a med bay thing. So if my guy is hurt and I want to roll, even if it's a 3+, if I got a 2, well, I guess he's just dying on the hospital floor, I guess. I don't know. There's nothing I can do about it. It just seems like you're at mercy of the dice in kind of a bummer way. There are games that mostly boss battlers that have a good kind of death ratio where it's like, oh, you're there, but you're still coming back. And this can have that. And I especially feel once you get more units, it can get kind of XCOM-y like, where it's almost like a semi-permanent death, because actually they can fully retire, but that I wasn't able to experience that. We don't have any extra people to fill in. There's no beta team, maybe said that beta team sucks. So I wasn't able to experience that. It might handle that well, but either way, it just felt kind of cruddy to just roll and be like, no, guess I didn't heal. I don't know, whatever, I guess. I wasn't engaged with that at all. I would like to either maybe make it a time thing or something to where it's like I'm making this sacrifice to get this, or I'm paying this to get that. If you think like, for some reason, I think Darkest Dungeon, like the video game, I haven't played the board game, but in the video game, they get locked away for a little bit, and it costs a certain amount of money or whatever, and that's money that's hard earned. So you're paying a price to heal them, but they are going to get healed, unless then they go drinking afterwards or run off or whatever. That's Darkest Dungeon's problem. My point is, I didn't like the random healing of the med bay. Just wasn't my cup of tea, especially because it starts out really crap. It's like a 5+, so it's like, well, okay, whatever. I mean, I guess we can waste an upgrade there until eventually it becomes usable, maybe. So, yeah, that was kind of a bummer. Okay, let's talk focus tokens. I mentioned these a few times. So you have these tokens here. Everybody starts out with them, and they help you, which is nice. They help you in the stat checking. So in case you didn't know, there's a lot of stat checking here where it's like, did they see you? Check your stealth. Did you hit them? Check if you hit them. Did they wound you? Check your defense. Most things are pretty much just a roll against something based off, a target number, essentially. Are you trying to sabotage and, loop feed the video in the camera? Roll your dice. You can use these appropriately. So this helps with combat to upgrade your die, essentially. There's ones for stealth. There's shield ones you can use for defense, stuff like that. Where it comes into play more is if you're playing a full character, not a squad member. We'll talk about squad members in a little bit. Because you have these cards, and these cards often will have a cost in the upper left. Let me see if I can find one that has a cost. Oh my gosh, everything is free. Right here. Okay. So right in the face, has a cost, and then has a bonus, and all of them have this little bonus thing where you can essentially buff up the card a little bit. Maybe it gives you burst. Well, guess what? If you do this, now you have burst 2, or it does more damage, now it does even more damage. So you can use those there. And your weapons have this black die, so you can roll these black die to get these tokens. Additionally, if you are playing with squad members, you get a support thing to where you can pick your tokens as like a wild token, which is very nice to be able to pick. You can very plan your turns that way. They're very nice, and it kind of supplements the fact that you're probably only playing 2 cards at most on a turn. Sometimes maybe 3 if you're playing like an ongoing or something like that. So if you compare again back to Reichbusters, and I do that because you guys have experience with that, you can play some decent combos in Reichbusters where it's a couple cards in, right? I do this and do this and do that. It was the highlight of that game. This doesn't have that as much. It's a little bit more laid back where it's like, I'm just going to buff up this attack and that's it. It might be, I'm going to buff up this attack and add it, make it AoE or something like that. Or I'm going to do an ongoing, do that. But by the time you get to 3 cards, that's probably the maximum you're ever doing. And it's more just buffing a certain action as opposed to doing a combo of actions. So you're typically still just doing 1 action per token up to 3 actions essentially in your turn. And that's mostly it. I really liked the fact that it was kind of a currency too. It reminded me a little bit of Wolfenstein's ammo, just very slightly. Wolfenstein's ammo system is a little bit more advanced than that, but it's serving a different purpose there. It just kind of reminded me of that. And these all are kind of this stealth, then go loud alarm kind of mechanic. So it's kind of interesting to see that shared throughout them, except for Reichbusters, which doesn't really have that spending mechanic ingrained like that, which really did enjoy that. So the focus tokens were great. I liked getting them from attacking. I liked getting them to spend. I liked being able to get them from Valor tokens. We'll mention these a little bit later as well. But anyway, yeah, focus tokens, very, very nice. Did enjoy those a lot. Equipment add-ons were also, I really liked the equipment add-ons. Essentially, I mean, it's pretty basic stuff. So you have I have this sniper. Okay, and I can add this sniper scope to it, and the sniper scope adds some stuff. Or I have this Vormacht blaster, and I can get an enhanced energy cell and upgrade it. And they do different things. Maybe now suddenly my Vormacht blaster now stuns everybody it hits, which is pretty cool for guys who have more than 1 health, which is like less than half of the people you tend to fight, but whatever. It's still very cool to do that, or it makes it stronger, or it gives it another ability, or whatever it might do. It makes it accuracy, so you can shoot past all the grunts and hit the boss and just snipe the boss out. Very nice to be able to do that. I really liked the add-on system because it was simple and enjoyable. You get laser dot sights and stuff like that. There's actually a fair bit of them, and this is just, by the way, the prototype is not everything. This is not everything. You're going to get a lot more in the base one, a lot more cards, a lot more gear, and all this other stuff. It's just going to expand. So even if I already liked it, I know I'm going to love it in the final version just because there's more of it, right? Which is typically always a good thing. All right. So I'm going to share my single largest negative. Now, before I get into this, I kind of already just mentioned it, but this is a prototype, and my aim is to tell you guys where it is right now, my opinion on it right now, and to provide feedback for anybody, such as a dev, who wants to listen. I have spoken to the dev several times, or really they've reached out to me several times asking for feedbacks, literally asking for it, thanking people for feedback on their preview page. So I fully expect them to have a response to this and take this into account as they develop it. But in its current system, I absolutely hate the dice. Now, in general, I have bad dice luck. Now, that's, luck is a myth. I get that. What I mean is that depending on how dice are, and I've even mentioned this way back even in Chronicle X, early on the channel, that I tend to roll a certain way. And most people do. That's why sometimes swapping hands can help sometimes because you're rolling it different than you normally do. Some people tend to just kind of plop it. Some people tend to roll it this way. Some people tend to, you have a certain way of rolling that you don't even really think about, especially how you hold the dice in your hand. It might only rattle and not actually tumble in your hand, for instance. So you can get kind of bad luck here. Now, these dice, unscientifically, what I'm saying is sometimes natural tendencies tend to break randomness so that you lean one way or another depending on the layout of the dice or whatever. But I'm talking just pure probability here. So this is a white die. It's the most common thing you're doing. It has 2 blanks side by side, right? And then it has 3 ones and 1 2. Okay, so 2 blanks. Okay, so we're at a third chance of it being a blank. Then the only other option you have if you pay something, or typically, is to get a red die. The red die is half ones, and then you have 2 2s and a 3. So 50% chance of only getting a 1. I have rolled the maximum dice I possibly could on a character many times and gotten 3. Multiple reds. I have paid to upgrade every dice I could to red. There are only 3 red there, and they all roll a 1 because half the time they're going to be a 1. It's a 50% chance. And so it just really sucks to go, and get 5. Or I'm sorry, and get 3 when you need like 5 or something like that. Or sometimes during some hacks, like in this one, it can get intense, where you need a big number to where it's just impossible for most characters unless they get the 1 in 6 chance on every single white die. It doesn't matter if you roll 4 1s, you're not going to get 4 2s. The chances of that are incredibly low. Right? So if it's a chance 6 and you only have white die, just give up. It's not worth it. You're not going to get it. Now, you can do a little bit of mitigation, right, by upgrading those to red based off the currency that you have very limited of. You can only have 3 focus tokens at any given time, like max. So you can only max upgrade the dice there. Now, you can get other stuff, and there are Valor tokens that can also help. And like, there's a little bit of mitigation there, but it is an uphill battle if you tend to roll poorly like I do. And additionally, the manipulation, the reroll, very basic. You can discard a card to do reroll. That's pretty much it. There are some Valor tokens. Other than that, you're not really doing anything. And again, rerolling for a crap chance from a crap chance is still a crap chance. It's just a crap chance twice. Now, combine this with very limited resources, right? Like I said, you're only probably paying, because you're already paying to use most of these cards, especially if it's an actual thing that buffs it. So here's a red in your face. It adds a white die. Great. I really want to get him. So I'm going to pay for that, right, to make an attack. And then I'm going to use my one-time boost on my weapon to add another thing there. And then I'm going to spend my 1 focus token I have there to buff it. And then I still got 3 or 4 and I needed a 5 or a 6. Sorry about that. I just wasted so many resources that will take turns to get back, and failed. And there's not really a lot I can do about it. And because I spent a token to do that, and I only recover 3 and all that, you can waste an entire turn shooting at a group of 3 enemies and doing nothing. I've done it before several times. Now, when that becomes frustrating is because those are your 3 actions, and so then you just wasted your whole turn. So you attacked and you rolled your dice and you even tried to re-roll, which is just wasting more resources. So now I've pumped 5 resources into this attack and nothing. And it's like soul breaking. I hated just feeling like it was a waste of, like, why even bother? I guess I can try to attack them, but anybody besides the grunts are like these spotter drones, which spawn all the time with Overwatch. They have an attack of 5, so good luck defending that, right? I rolled 2 defense die. Okay. That means it's impossible. I can only get a 4 on this unless I happen to have a token. One of my 3 that I only get in certain circumstances, normally can't even pick what I get, do that. To make matters worse, and this is where I'm going to leave off on this subject. We'll move on to something else. They have squad members and regular characters. Now, I played with all 4 people. I played with 2 people. I played with 1 people. The combination I didn't do was 3 people, 1 squad member. Okay. But either way, I got a good variety. I even played solo. So you're welcome. And how that works is you play with cards. Your squad members don't have a card, so they have a special ability. So for instance, Olivia here has Fight Fire with Fire. Attacks with a Zethan weapon, gains a red die, and deal +1 damage. So first of all, if she doesn't have a Zethan weapon, that does nothing for you. There's no benefit at all. So it's only situational, though it's pretty easy to get her a Zethan weapon, especially with Valor tokens and looting and stuff like that. You can probably get her one. But that's it, right? So she has 1 extra red die, and that's it. She has no cards or anything like that. You can discard one of your cards. Anybody that is playing can discard a card to do a reroll for a special a squad member. But if you're playing solo, you only have 5 cards. you're not going to spend them all re-rolling the 3 other people to get 1 re-roll in their turn. If they attack 3 times and you want to re-roll 3, that's 3 cards. It's not sustainable. You end up without, you can get some re-rolls through Valor tokens, but to get those Valor tokens, you have to be doing crap like killing guys. And to kill guys, you often need to re-roll. I either needed more manipulation or better die. Ideally, die that trend up a little bit, perhaps. I felt really hamstrung. And that was with, again, using Valor tokens. It was doing that. I just was not rolling well, and it just sucked wasting turns. It got really frustrating. Where like when I was playing as Olivia, I felt like I just couldn't do crap because she couldn't. The cards are powerful. The cards add stuff to that. They lose that here, right? And so, or like Called Shot. Okay, so Billy can do +2 damage. Well, if all you're fighting are people that have 1 health, 1 health, 1 health, maybe 2 health, right? And so like 3 of the guys here, that means 9 of the spawn cards have 1 health, so it doesn't help him at all, but he lost all of his tactic cards. He is fundamentally worse because the stats don't change. It's not like he got an extra die by default and is more defensive now. Like nothing changed except he lost a lot of potential. So I think that needs to be fine-tuned. I think that ideally the dice can trend a little bit higher, perhaps, for poor me, or there's another way to mitigate or manipulate, or the squad members increase. So it just, like, you really want those cards. In fact, if I were to solo again, if I were to sit down and play this game, I would play with all 4 of them with decks. It's just how I'd play it. Because I feel like I have more chance to control my own fate there instead of being at the whims of those evil dice. And again, I do tend to roll poorly. If you guys have seen me play Warhammer, you would know this. It's bad. It's really bad. I have resurrected like 6 Necrons in my life. Okay, so like it's not good. But wanted to point that out here. Definitely my biggest fault, and I probably just spent way too much time on it. You're tired of me complaining about the dice, but it was definitely the pain point. Every single session, I got frustrated with it. One more negative, and we're going to go to some really good positives again. You don't always get to keep the loot you looted. Sometimes you just, I guess, drop it on the floor or something. And I hate that. I would love loot. I'm a loot whore. When I see loot tokens there, I'm like, I'm looting everything there. I'm not just going to be carrying all the guns on my back and in my, bag of holding, and we're going to lug it. I'm going to be fighting the whole campaign with like 1 arm because the rest just have guns and bazookas and missiles and grenades like underneath the arm of the other one in a satchel or something. Like, I love loot. First mission even, we get this really cool weapon. It's this like level 2 card, and you have to discover it. I'm going to be talking about the discover here shortly, so I'll bypass that. But anyway, we get this really cool weapon. However, our armory can't support anything at the start, and then it can only support level 1 cards, which means we don't get to keep that level 2 card. So it just goes back, and we can loot it again maybe. And I've never really been too big of a fan with that. I understand it, right? But I would rather the loot deck be limited to just whatever my armory is versus me just not being able to do it. Now that you would have to balance it with that in mind. So like that would be a costly change time-wise. Not impossible, just it would take time to do. However, I don't like getting an item and then losing it. Like that always kind of was the bummer. So I didn't like that. Typically, if I have something, I want to have it. All right, let's talk about enemy defense abilities. These are actually really cool. Like there was this guy here, and he has it to where he's like the mind caller or something like that. And every time I attacked him, I had to remove a focus token. Those precious focus tokens, I had to remove that. It would cost to even attack him, and it was all thematic too. It was like you should know better than to attack me, or that'll cost you, or some junk like that. It was really nice. And they all have stuff like that, which I thought was pretty cool. Like this guy has defense, unwise to draw my attention. If this enemy is attacked and survives, it makes an attack against its attacker. So he just counterattacks all the time. Or the war leader, mirror pawns. Once per round after a thrall in his zone is killed, draw and resolve a threat card. So you want to snipe him out essentially. He's the war leader over his pawns, right? So it's thematic, it makes sense. The Reaver's ready for violence. The fire team has an assault vest, right? Where if you do AoE, like if you try to throw a grenade or something like that, they're more resistant to that. It just changes things up a little bit, which is kind of cool. These are robotics, so you can't make them bleed and stuff like that. Just very, very cool. I really enjoyed the defense mechanics. There are a few attack mechanics, but for the most part, they're defensive And I quite liked those, especially combined with the spawn event. It made it to where each time somebody came in, even if it's this guy for the third time, it's going to be different because the spawn event was different. So he's not like a whirlwind of blaze. Now he's making us cower in fear or something like that. And then I still have to deal with his ready for violence defensive ability that he always has. So that was kind of cool, and I enjoyed seeing that. It just, again, added some nice variety there, which was really nice. The tactic cards, again, also are fun. Like, I really do enjoy the card gameplay here because the cards can be used in multiple ways. It's not so much a combo system, which I normally praise, so I'm not even actually going to here because that's not really the focus. But you do have reactionary ones, and then you have ones that you actually pay for, and then you have free ones. And then on top of that, you have these like ongoing ones that are kind of like buffs or buff plus debuffs, depending on like a trade-off kind of thing. But you can use this, again, for a reroll. So it's a resource you can use for that. Kind of reminding Mythic Battles Pantheon a bit in that sense, with the discarding of them. And then there's also the pay to buff the card as well. And then, of course, you can upgrade those. I'll talk about campaign upgrades here in a little bit also. But yeah, it was really nice to have essentially 3 or 4 different uses for the cards. It made it to where I had a lot of options with my hand of 5, which you always have. You always draw up to a hand of 5. So every single round, you got your 5 cards. You can kind of make decisions based off that. And you can even get essentially a token based off the cost too. So I forget, plan is the term there. Didn't do it too often. That's because there are so many other uses for the cards that sometimes it's like, okay, I guess I could do that. It's often better to plan than it is to discard at the end, which you can do that to draw more cards too. So love the card system. Solid, enjoyable. Liked it a lot. Okay, so I talked about how this is a big game for big boys. I know that sounds stupid, and that's why I said it, because I found it funny. But it is kind of, it's a heavy game. Like, the rule book's like 68 pages. It's a little wordy as far as the rule book goes. It kind of explains reasoning along with the rules. It's not some cold, feeling, soulless thing. And so that is there, which, helps. And there's some art, stuff like that too. It is a prototype, so it's hard to judge the final form, but there also is just a lot of stuff. Like I said, with all the tokens and stuff like that, I feel like, and this is me loving things as streamlined as possible. The more streamlined, as long as it's not abstract, the better for me. I tend to love it. And there are some oddities I think that could be lowered. Like there are rules around this ventilation. Like, this is a whole thing. This is a whole page about this ventilation system. I think it's actually a little bit more than a page. It's like a page and a half. And it's because it's not just a simple you enter, you exit. It's more like, well, then you enter movement here, and this signifies that, you can see through the vent, or you're in the vent, you can see out of it. It's too much. It's like, I would like that cut. Additionally, I found the discover check of these to be about as close as I could find to the noise system in Right Buzzers, where I don't want it in there. I understand it. It's a cool idea. I think there are a lot of cool ideas. But I think the important part of finalizing a game is taking all of your amazing ideas and just finding the ones that really add to the game versus take away. And I felt getting these cards, right, looting these, took away from the game because I had to discover them. And really, at least with this layout, only one person really could, because even with a 2, if the discovery is a 2 and I'm only rolling 1 die, I have to roll a perfect 1 out of 6 chance. If it's a 3, I literally can't do it unless I get a focus token, which is expensive and a waste of time. So I would loot them and then always have to give it to her, or she would always get that, and then she just discovers them. And then half the time, even if she discovers a level 2, I gotta discard it anyway. I would have much rather have just been able to pick up the weapon and use it. Beta Team did it, and it went wonders for them. That's a story thing. You'll hear about that when you get the game, but and it's a joke. But I didn't feel like it added to it, right? Same with the ventilation system. Yeah, it's cool. You can do that. Yeah, it's thematic, but does it really need to be in there? Is it making the game better because it's in there? I'd argue probably not. And so I think those are really the 2 big ones I would kind of take out. The only other one I haven't mentioned this at all yet is roster slots. So the idea is that Olivia takes up a roster, and the roster slot has this stuff, right? Has like the Vormok Blaster, and anybody slotted in there gets the Vormok Blaster. I understand why it's there, especially around retired characters and wounded and all that kind of stuff. But overall, again, just like the ventilation thing, while I think it's cool, I think it's nice, same with the discovery, it makes sense, I don't think it really adds enough to warrant the mechanic bloat, right? Like you could trim the learning curve down a little bit. You could, especially because it's just not something that it's going to really matter every single turn anyway, or it slows down the game or something like that. I don't think in either of those three, there's probably some more you could probably streamline too, to be honest, but those were the three that stood out to me. Ventilation, I think, could be streamlined. I didn't like the discovery at all. I think that just, it's cumbersome in practice because you're always just trading with the person or only having that person do that. And she already is the only person that can hack anything. And so it just, like, it made it to where these people essentially can't use those weapons until they're discovered. And to discover them, you have to give them to her. So, you know, anyway, it just, we often would skip it. And I love loot. So, didn't like that. And then of course essentially the roster slots, or it's kind of an abstraction to fit a use case that I don't think necessarily needs it. So in general, I think it's fine just to say, hey, you know, these are your gear, distribute them as you wish, because you can change them in the roster slots anyway. So it's like, we'll just pick 4 people and then here's all your equipment, equip them and go. Like, it doesn't need to be any more than that. It really doesn't. Don't think that adds any to it. So that's another room for improvement in my opinion. Let's talk about conditions, because I am fascinated and fearful of these things. Most missions, not the first one at least, it goes a little nice on you. You have these condition cards. You draw them, and you can enhance them. I'll mention that again in campaign upgrades or downgrades. These things change, again, the scenario. If you think, I guess the closest I could think of this is Cthulhu Death May Die, where you can have a mission, but depending on the elder god of death that you equip into that mission, right, that combo makes it unique, right? It's like, oh, this is one with Hastur, or this is one with Cthulhu, right? That'll be totally different, even though it's the same mission. Same thing here. This mission with depleted resources feels completely different than this one with, I forget, there was like, okay, so I'll give you an example. One of the ones I had made it to where that open turn order was turned off briefly, to where it always had to be this person and then to the left, right? And then this person and then to the left for the first action. Then it was free. And that was even more of a twist. So you had to do some action. It means you had to spend it or do something. And sometimes we were just going to waste it because it's like, well, I don't want to do anything. You know, I want you to go first, but I have to do something. So it was like some kind of like communication, something or other. Very interesting twist on it, but not terrible. This one was god awful. This one was terrible. When I talk about when I missed a bunch, this was when I missed most of my rolls. It's called depleted resources, and essentially you have one of each resources. All these other tokens are gone. You don't get them. So when you're rolling this die, you may as well not. You have like 4 tokens available for the entire freaking game. That sucks. It sucked a lot. It's not depleted resources, or you're just starving in general. It's just really bad. It was not fun to play that. I mean, it was interesting. It was cool. It was different. I'll always remember it. But some of those are very nasty, and you slot in even worse ones. Again, I'll talk about them just briefly, but really like the condition cards. Looking through the other ones, they're all very interesting. They're all different. And again, it combined with the strategy card, with the characters you happen to bring, with the scenario, with how they're equipped, changes the experience each time, and was very happy with that. It was quite nice. And again, it lets things come back up later. Talk about that momentarily. Last negative, and this is really just, again, another form of feedback from me specifically, but this game can be very hard randomly. What I mean by that is, I actually recreated this mission on purpose because one failed skill check ruined this whole game for us. The entire mission was botched because of one check. And I feel anytime you can look and say this one thing determined the entire outcome of it, that's too powerful. That needs to be mellowed out a little bit to where it was a series of bad decisions, but there were places where we could have recovered, but this really wasn't. I'll explain. In this mission, you have to go in sneaky and essentially get different and hack 3 different places, right? So you have to hack into these 3 different databases that apparently can't talk to each other on the same internet, whatever. Okay, so you have one here, you have one here, and you have one here. Okay. Now, again, this is hacking. The only person that can hack is Olivia. These other people are crap. They roll a single die. It's worthless. Don't even bother. Except that it's as hard as it is for the amount of tokens we have in the escalation track, starting with 1. So in other words, the first one, as long as no other have been detected, is difficulty 1. Each time you do it, you add 2. So it's difficulty 3. In other words, Marissa, Billy, and Kyle could hack the first one because they're only rolling 1 die. It's a 1 or a 2, or a third of the chance it's 0. So they have a third of a chance of failing, 2/3 of a chance of actually succeeding that first one. Then they can't do the other ones because, and unless they for some reason decide to get a token, which we couldn't because it was depleted. So there was just no way of doing it. They couldn't. It was now only Olivia that could hack these. Well, the other problem is that if you are detected at any moment where the alarm sounds, and the alarm sounds the moment you don't kill anybody that sees you, and there's a camera all the way here, camera all the way here, camera all the way here, and people right in front of the doors that you need that aren't moving. They're not patrols or anything like that, okay? So you have all of these kind of issues coming up, right? If you try to sneak past them or try to shoot them and it fails, either way, the cameras are going to see you unless you're in this spot, this spot, this spot, or this spot. 4 spots in the entire place. Otherwise, they're going to see you. And then there was a guy in here. And so they've seen you. You're as good as dead, especially because the only door to there is way over here. You'd have to go past 2 cameras and a guy that's a spawn that's sitting there. Either way, I failed a stealth check, a single stealth check, which meant that they saw me, the cameras saw me, which means the people watching the camera saw me, which means the people that saw the guys who saw them saw me, and there was no way for me to kill all those groups of people. So, alarms tripped. The rules state that once the alarm's tripped, the difficulty of the hack becomes 10. 10. Now, again, I know I just rolled a 10. I've never rolled a 10 before, ever. So, like, I'll tell you how useful this was. So not only is the alarm going off, which is bad, it turns everything on patrols. Everybody's now attacking you. Everybody knows you're there. It is just wave upon ending wave. The enemies never stop spawning. They are permanently there. They never go away. You can't just wipe the floor of them. And you can't keep up with it. There are too many. There are 1, 2, 3... 4, 5, 6, 7 spawns here just constantly of groups, of all of these groups that I can barely get above a 4 on. It was bad. And now suddenly the only person that could do this had to get an almost perfect roll. If she didn't upgrade, so she got 1 red and 4 white. So that's a max of 3. These average to a 1, right? So 4, 5, 6, 7 is probably her average. And that's assuming you got a max 1 out of 6 on that. And then the average on these, you get a 7. So you have to get not only above average, but above average several times over to get that. And again, she was a squad member in this one. So she didn't have a lot of, reroll stuff. I mean, I could do it with Marissa. I could do it with Kyle. We were playing 2-player in this one, and it was a mess. It was bad. We got to a point where it's like, yeah, no, we're not doing it. Retreat. We're done. And it sucked. I failed several times playing these missions where I just didn't get it. And it's because that difficulty, like that one stealth, if I had been able to stealth through it, we'd only gotten 2 of them or all that, maybe it would have been fine. But the moment you're detected on that one, it's pretty much game over. There's not really a good point in continuing. You're just going to hurt your people more. It's better to retreat. So it requires almost a perfect run there. And I felt that balance could be fixed a little bit. Okay. Last point, and then a summary. The campaign upgrades are so good. Really good. I really enjoyed them. They were in the story. Some of them were even funny. They were adding things to there. There were different upgrades. You can go on special missions and get special valor upgrade tokens. You can get different conditions. So for instance, we had the beta team go after a weapon supply depot. They did not succeed. So we got a special condition card that might haunt us later when they have those weapons. So it can come back to haunt us. It kind of reminded me of Bard's song where you like slide in the card, right? So it comes up later. Oh, that person we saved. Oh, look, they're here now. Just same thing there. You can upgrade so many, like pretty much everything has an option of upgrading, of slotting in. New entire enemies can be added. Very cool that you can, I think, upgrade different stuff, different weapons and stuff like that. The campaign upgrades were really cool. Like the new base options. You can upgrade your tactic cards and customize your deck a little bit. I was making Marissa more of a support character. You can do that by getting rid of some of her attack cards, making her more support. Or as a soldier, maybe she's more attack, less support. You could do that as well. So yeah, overall, very very happy with the campaign upgrades and the potential there. There's a lot there, new everything essentially, and I thought that was really cool. So that is all of my various opinions on Earth Under Siege Flashpoint. Overall, taking away the frustration with the dice, which can be worked on, can be fixed. For my taste, if they decide to cater to my taste. There may be other people that suffer from bad roll dialing like me. Bad die rolling. I'm saying dying already. This game had so many good things going for it. Loved the theme, loved the implementation, loved the noise, loved the tactic cards, loved the scenarios. They were great. I loved the variety of the scenarios. Loved the miniatures, loved the art, loved the escalation track and the noise checks and the picking the strategies and the conditions. And I love the open turn order and how the conditions can, mess with that or mess with your resources. I loved the focus token, ammo token kind of system going on there. The overwatching was fun. The weapon attachments, looting was fun as long as you get to keep it. There was just so many good things about this game. But then there was those little bits that it just needs more development. Honestly, I get a lot of prototypes. Some of them are just finalized. They're complete. They could just ship this game. And then some of them have a little bit more work ahead of them, which I think is fine. I think that's what we say a lot of times Kickstarter is for. I think this needs a little bit more time to really fine tune everything, but everything there, all the ingredients are there. They just need to be baked into a nice, delicious cake. And right now the cake's just slightly runny, but it's getting there. It's close and time to eat. And once it is, I think it's going to be great. So I have very high hopes for this game. I'll definitely be following it. And you can, I'm sure, see this in my collection in the future. I'll be grabbing this and hopefully it'll be another mainstay. I've wanted to like a system like this for so long. Wolfenstein was great. Reichbusters was a bust. Hopefully this joins Wolfenstein as just being fantastic for me. And again, if we could fix those dice, that would have cut 10 minutes out of this whole review. So literally that's it for me. I mean, it as long as it gets that balance, as long as it gets those final touches, which I'm sure they are, they've reached out for feedback very well. Not all developers do that. So I think that's really important to keep in mind. Only a handful have responded to me in that way, especially if I have negativity to say. It's hard. It's hard to get any kind of criticism to something you've made. But honestly, I think the future's bright for this one. So that's my review. If you have any questions at all for me, feel free to ask in the description below. There is also a link to the Kickstarter in the description below, of course, as well. You're about to see a full list of my pros and cons, so you can see that also. And with that, I hope you did enjoy the video. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day, and I'll talk to you guys again very, very soon. Bye, guys.